The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, buenos dias, and bienvenido to our presentation on Ecuador, Quito, and the Tren Crucero, which is a train that operates between Quito and Guayaquil. Welcome everybody, my name's Ted, Contours Travel. I've been operating Contours for about 42 years, and my first trip to Ecuador was 1975, and I've fallen in love with it ever since. People ask me what my favourite areas in South America are. I always say Ecuador and Guatemala. Both very small countries and great to get around in, easy to get in, not as big as Ecuador, Peru or Argentina. And spectacular countryside, great history, colourful markets, Indians. And a place like in Ecuador, the size of it is quite astounding, because you can have the geography means that you can have just about any climate, and within a sort of few hours you're from the coastal areas. You could be swimming and snorkeling in these sort of beach resorts, and within a couple of hours up into the mighty Andes, through the valley of volcanoes and down into the Amazon, where you can't do that in any other country. So you've got glaciers and slopes and snow-covered incredible volcanoes, forests, mangroves, and the Amazon. So I love that sort of size. Anyway, so I'm attracted to it, but I'm biased. Anything I say, I love all this area. So we're just going to be talking about Quito and the surrounding area. The train that runs once a week through from Quito all the way down to Rio Bamba in the Devil's Nose area, just approximately. I'll see a better map later on, and then into Guayaquil. It was designed and built to carry cargo from the port harbour of Guayaquil into the highlands about 100 years ago, so it went into disrepair. And just recently, in the last couple of years, they fixed up the train tracks because they were in disrepair, and introduced a beautiful train service. So if you've got clients who love train travel, this is the place to visit and to do and see the spectacular places. Quito is set in a valley about 2,800 metres, so above sea level, so it's quite easy to get around. It's not as high as Cusco or Machu Picchu area or Lake Titicaca, so the altitude shouldn't be a problem for people. Beautiful valley surrounded by incredible volcanoes, and on a clear day, of course, you can see all this type of things. It's a colonial city built on quite spectacular areas, and just let me read to you from a little article to set the scene for Quito. Quito was the first city to be named a World Heritage Site by UNESCO in 1978. Historical Old Town is the largest, most intact and best restored in the Americas. It hosts no less than 40 churches, we'll see in a minute, convents, monasteries, 17 plazas and all sorts of rooms, 12 museums, countless courtyards. When I first visited in 1975, it was a very difficult city, crowded city to get around in. Polluted, diesel cars and buses, and so it wasn't a pleasant place at all. But over the years, it's just the government's turned it right around, and they stopped the traffic going into Quito. So you've got these, so once upon a time this would have been full of little buses and cars going through. Now they've created walkways and pedestrian miles, and cars are not allowed to visit. So you've got this incredible history that you're wandering around in. It's colonial history. There's only one Inca ruin that's way down south that's seen on different. Clients do see that. So you've got this colonial history of churches, museums, and a lot of colour in the place also. Some great museums like the Chapel of the Man Museum, and this is a historical, sunk by one artist who's recreated a kaleidoscope of images and through the history, and it's worth about an hour or more visiting. That's just on the suburbs outside Quito. But the other amazing museums and work pieces of art are the churches and the monasteries. So you wonder what happened to all the Inca gold. Guess what? It's finished up on the altars of the churches, not only here but all the way through Latin America, especially Colombia, Ecuador, Peru and Bolivia. So this is where it's all happened. So beautifully designed cathedrals, churches and places to visit. Just wandering around, it's quite pleasure. They've got a little cable car that presents great views looking Quito, old and the old city and also the new city. They, as I said, they introduced these trolley cars that now run on diesel electricity, so it saves the pollution. And just a pleasure to wander around and explore. So at night, we've got some hotels which I'll show you in a minute that are in colonial Quito, and there's a new modern suburbs, and they've got the nice 4- and 5-star hotels there also. There's an area just outside. This is in the new area. Think Carlton perhaps, Lygon Street, and this is a whole lot of restaurants and live music and activity. All the young people come along and see what's going on, and just a good fun place to go out and have some entertainment. And of course there's gourmet restaurants all over the place. So visiting, staying, 5-star hotels, an old mansion that got a tenant that's been converted from a private house into a, I think they've got 20 or 40 odd rooms in here. Absolutely, and in that style of what comes from the influences of European. And then you have something like one of my favourite places is the Patio Andaluz, which is just a quaint little hotel, probably a good 3.5, 4-star hotel, just about a 5-minute walk from the centre of Plaza San Francisco. A nice comfortable hotel. So the range from 5-star boutique to 5-star, there's Marriott's and Hilton's in the new part, so we've got a nice range of hotels to offer your clients. So what people do outside Quito, this is what I first always remember driving around the countryside, this magnificent countryside, and the roads are quite precarious, but they're vastly improved. You can stay, do a day trip to famous Otavalo market, the town, heading up north towards the Colombian border, and they have a famous Saturday market, but now the town is open all year round, all week around, so you can travel any day to have a look. But Saturday in particular, a lot of the markets in South America are established again before the Spanish came along, and the natives or the local communities would trade with each other in a central point. So Pisac, for example, in Cusco, just outside Cusco, Otavalo, to name a few, and there's a few along this area too. So Otavalo is quite famous for the Otavalo Indians. It's about a 2-hour beautiful ride up north, and to see the handiwork and the very bright colours and the weaving, there's jewellery, there's bags, and there's all sorts of things. So you just wander around at your own pace to explore and decide whether you want to buy any of this thing. It's all good fun. So the Otavalo markets and the Otavalo Indians. They're famous for the very bright, colourful weaving, and stitching handiwork that we don't see in Peru. Bolivia, they're a lot subdued. The colours are a lot subdued, unless colourful, if you like. Still colourful. I mean, paintings, jewellery, great fun place to do. Some of the other things we can do, again, probably an hour is into the spring. This particular area, we have people just staying there for 1 or 2 nights and relaxing before and half, doing hard work, coming in and out of the Amazon. It's a little bit on the east side of the Andes, probably an hour and a half drive from Quito, Hot Springs. The other thing, of course, Ecuador is famous for, it's on the equator. So the equator runs through Ecuador, just through here, and that's a day trip, or half a day trip just outside, where you can go out and experience standing on both sides of the equator. And it's been included as a day trip or a deliberate part of a full day trip around on the way to Otavalo. So that's the marketplace there, Quito. There's the equator through here. So lots of nice good sightseeing in this particular area. So people lots of just are interested in that setting, and of course you can stand on both sides. And they do all sorts of tricks here. I don't ask me why, but evidently an egg can stand up on the equator by itself without falling over. Try that anywhere else and it won't work. There's this thing called pulling your fingers apart, and evidently you can't. Don't ask me to explain all that, by standing on the line. So there's a few little funny things that your clients can do. Now we've got to talk about the trains. This beautiful railway line that's been, as I said, repaired, and they've added some trains. And the beauty of this is it's a 4-day trip. So we're starting in Quito. Otavalo's up here, and they've got a funny little puffing billy type tracker through this area here. And so you can take off from Quito, and what they do is they overnight at local haciendas. Depending on how many people are on the train, they spread them over 2 or 3, and they're only a short ride from the train station. So they overnight beautiful haciendas. So this is the first day you start, day 2, day 3, and then continue on all the way to Guayaquil. And the famous Devil's Nose is just through here, and we'll see a little shot of that. So it's just a beautiful way of experiencing the countryside, just rolling the hills. And this is what is known as the Avenue of Volcanoes. So on one side you've got incredible volcanoes here, see those, the heights, and of course on the other side, and every now and then they do explode. Cotopaxi in particular, one of the highest volcanoes in the Andes. So scenic wise, just fantastic, beautiful. So little colonial towns, volcanoes, as I said, the countryside, and this is the famous Devil's Nose. From the high plain, the Altiplano, and down into the tropical area, they had difficulty maintaining or actually building somebody. An engineer from Europe, I think it was from France, came along and said the way to solve it is to do a switchback. And again, people that love train travel, you join it somewhere just around the corner here in the little village, and then the train actually comes up and switches back down on itself, and then again switches in, and then sort of goes down towards the tropical forest of the Guayaquil. Banana, and the scenery completely changes to banana plantations and sugarcane, and through. So you can do this as a day trip on its own. We drive people down through. It's a long trip, and it's a combined of 2 or 3 day trips down to Cuenca, or participate in the 4-day train trip and have this experience of the switchback railway line. And that's the way they worked out to getting up from the Altiplano down into the tropics to Guayaquil. Along the way, as I said, we stay at these beautiful haciendas, and these can be booked for your clients with or without the train. And some of this particular one here, they got fabulous cooking lessons. And so they're in different places. They're all working cattle or sheep or alpacas, farmlands that are established. Some of them actually grow incredible rose plantations we've come across. So they've been converted into B&Bs, if you like, or homestays. Very comfortable, very unique into this particular area. Because, for example, Peru and Bolivia don't have these particular homestays. Or haciendas as they are known. It's just a delightful way. And people go out for walks, exploring, and seeing how the farm actually works and operates. So it's a nice break. We then travel down to, the Cuenca. Can I just flip back to the map? Yeah, so just to let you know, so Quito, Otavalo, train trip, can be done by car, stopping at these particular places. By car we go all the way down to Cuenca. So I'm just going to talk about this area here. A beautiful, beautiful, lovely city to work 2 or 3 nights, and then you can travel by car through the national park to Guayaquil. Okay, so we just moved. So we're talking about Cuenca. And Cuenca is very famous for hats, straw reed hats, and they've been doing these for hundreds of years. And you know, when the Panama Canal was built just over 100 years ago, international workers from all over the world came around and literally are digging out the Panama Canal for the ships to pass through. And as an export port, also the Colombians and the Ecuadorians and they sent their goods and through to the Panama to be transshipped and onwards, including the hats that the Ecuadorians built. So these hats are hand woven in Cuenca, Ecuador. They finished up in Panama, and at the time they were supplied also to the foreigners who worked there, protection against the sun. And that's where the name came from. Panama hats are actually made in Cuenca, Quito, or just outside Quito and Cuenca. They are not made in Panama. So there's a trivia pursuit question for you that you might answer in the pub one night. Panama hats are made in Ecuador, a town called Cuenca. Okay, so we then basically winding it up. Again, like I say, I finish up saying how you can spend 20 days quite easily in Ecuador, Quito, surrounding countryside, Galapagos, Amazon. You can fly from Galapagos to Quito and transit to Amazon and do an Amazon cruise all in one day. So that's why one of the reasons I love Ecuador, the smallness of it, and you can get the spectacular Andes beaches and Amazon and everything else. Great markets, great scenery, great people, and our new brochure of just about 100 pages we've been worked on right now, so look out for this one. It'll be out in about 4 weeks' time and giving you all sorts of beautiful things and opportunities and tours that we love selling. So anything that we can help you with, South America, Mexico, Cuba, Caribbean islands, Cuba, we do a little bit of Jamaica and Barbados. Central America, there's 7 countries in there, from Guatemala to Panama, and of course Antarctica cruises. Thank you for your time, thank you for listening. Have a great afternoon. Bye. Oh, yep, that's the question.
So for those of you interested in going into the draw for a family, for every 5 sessions or 5 webinars you join us in, if you answer to this question correctly via email to contours@contourstravel.com.au, you go into the draw. So the question for this webinar was, where do Panama hats come from? I hope you all remember that. And if anybody has any questions, please write that down in the question section. Otherwise, we thank you very much for your time.
'24.